Accountability in governance is often touted as a panacea for the ills of public administration. However, a closer examination reveals that accountability is a complex and multifaceted concept that can be both empowering and limiting. The notion of accountability can be reduced to mere tokenism, where mechanisms are put in place but lack the teeth to effectively hold officials accountable for their actions. Furthermore, an overemphasis on accountability can lead to excessive bureaucracy and procedural delays, hindering effective governance. Moreover, accountability can create a culture of fear where officials prioritize avoiding blame over taking risks and innovating. This can stifle creativity and progress in governance. Additionally, those in power can use accountability mechanisms as a tool for control, exerting influence over subordinates and maintaining the status quo. Is accountability a right, or is it a privilege? This is the Eastern Eye. I am Alex Ogbodo. Welcome to the Eastern Eye here on Afia TV, a program that X-rays the political, social, and economic developments around us. Joining me tonight is Professor Joe Ukemenam, Executive Chairman, United Kingdom African Arts and Culture in the Olympics Village, Stratford, London. He's also a Professor of Criminology and the United Nations Expert for Africa Development. Thank you so much, Professor Ukemenam, for joining me tonight on the Eastern Eye.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
So every time you hear this, especially for someone who's coming from Africa, you in the United Kingdom, you always hear this, accountability this, accountability that. Is accountability an African problem?
No, accountability is not an African problem. In fact, accountability is not a problem at all. It's the abuse of accountability that is problematic. Accountability is about 1 + 1 is 2. And if you deduct 1 from 2, you get 1. As simple as that in elementary terms. But when you come to the society we live in now, particularly in this part of the world, elsewhere as well, it's not just limited to here, because I hate this behavior of for thinking that all the things that go wrong go here. No, there are good and bad everywhere. There's good and bad accountants and bad accountability. So what is accountability? Accountability, in an elementary sense, is you saying what you're supposed to do or what you're asked to do, and you doing it the way it is laid out to be done. When we talk about accountability, people look at it in cash and and pences, but it's more than that. It is about policy. It's about policy that is laid down on how a process needs to go from A to Z. And the question during review is, did it go from A to Z? And did it make that journey according to the speed at which it is prescribed? Now, if you and I are asked to follow a process from A to Z, and you're asked to be going at 50 miles an hour, and I'm asked to be going 100 miles an hour. So if I get there before you, and you apply 50 miles an hour, you got there where 50 miles allow you, you have performed your accountability doctrine. So have I performed my own accountability doctrine. What is problematic is where people, one, avoid policies or badly written policies, which creates loopholes and pigeonholes for people to duck and dive, to people to avoid responding, relating on the issues which they are actually meant to be. That is period. That's what accountability is. You ask, even in your domestic situations in your house, you ask a child to do something, and the child is expected to do as they are told, and that's accountability. It's accounted back to you. It doesn't have to be millions and billions of naira and all the shenanigans of institutions. However, with institutions and big institutions, then you find that the policies and procedures for accountability gets better spelled out and get monitored in order to ensure deliverance and accountability.
I mean, typically, you wouldn't blame anybody who's overtly focused on the Naira and Kobo aspects of accountability, because it's always on our faces here. But is it possible that the reason why there are awkward situations is that maybe some people just create what you might call bottlenecks in the policies you've referenced? So because if accountability is about policies, what happens when policies are intentionally skewed to create bottlenecks?
Yes, if you look at how policies are enacted, first of all, who are the people selected or elected or appointed to create those policies? What are their terms of references? If you look at law, if you produce or enact bad laws, you cannot place it on the street. So if you get those policies, then it becomes more, if you get bad policies, it becomes more difficult for those policies to be followed accordingly. It's not just a matter of, oh, we wrote a bad policy and another person is implementing it. However, the sort of caliber of people you have just described, we take one look at the policies and see the loopholes in it, especially the lack of opportunity to review and reflect on the goals of policies. And once they see those lack of opportunities to account for those things, and that is when they start playing those mind games. But if people know that if they break the rules and regulations, whether it is policy or whether it is law, that the full weight of the law would come against them, then that increases the chances of policies being the way it is instructed. I'll give you a classic example. Is look at the architects who design skyscrapers. On the paper, they have produced the drawings. That is the theory. In the field, the engineers start implementing these buildings brick by brick, block by block, according to what is written on there. And the engineers supervised would be made to account that if 10 blocks are made to be on a particular place, that is what it should be. If you're mixing concrete, there are rationale for mixing concrete, and that is what it is. But people listening to this program will probably think that we have deviated from what they think was accountability, but we have not.
Right. I mean,
we're just starting from the basis to illustrate what accountability, where it starts, the origin of accountability, and how it kind of grow into all sorts of problems which we are having in the society today.
Okay, so typically, with everything that we've actually touched on in this beginning, it's pointing at, well, the catalyst of the whole thing, it starts from just a simple idea, if you like, you can call it policy. But at the end of the day, how people react to these ideas will either make them accountable or not. Is it possible that some people will deliberately scuttle a process in order to maybe achieve something personal or score maybe a cheap political point?
Yeah, human beings are creative animals, and if they have dubious mind, they will work very hard to undermine a particular process, especially if they are not stakeholders in on the issue. And this is why, if you want to enact some policies, it becomes quite important that you have stakeholders involved in the design of the policies. The idea could come anywhere. The idea is usually one-liner. Then you develop it into a policy on how do we go from A to B and A to C in this, and what are the straitjackets that you need to give the operatives enough for them to do. Say, for example, Prime Minister of Britain cannot work outside the policy. And the policies of Britain, we are probably started from the party policies, where parties go to the annual general meetings, and from there they debate their policies. And in debating the policies, you have the people who are for it, and those who are against, and those who are in between. Then the policies are already crafted and publicized, and people read it and get prepared to come for debate. At the end of the debate is put to vote. Then the people who carry the vote, no policy is absolute or foolproof in the sense that everybody has to benefit from it from the same perspective in the same level. No, there has to be winners and losers. But at the end of the day, if you're dealing with government issues or societal matters, then you'll be looking at the overarching benefit of the people you are serving and say, fine, we want to put this road through this community. There are people who will be disfranchised in the process, but is it in the bigger interest of the society, of the government, not only government, but of the people, all the stakeholders? Is it in their best interest that this road go through that way? And in the road going through that way, you consider a lot of factors like environmental, economic, and all those things. All these things you bring into policies. And then you go into accountability. Accountability now comes to where all these are drafted and given to people to execute them. It is now those who execute them that make the thinkers of what you just mentioned would creep in, those who would want to undermine it for one reason or the other. Of course, there are many Judas in every society, so you're bound to get that. But the better policy or ways to circumvent that is to make sure that your policy is watertight as much as possible. And the team that reviews it and monitors it captures the information that you need in order to show that a particular project has been delivered according to the tenets of the original policy. So it's about how you place people along the line from conception to development of policy, to review, to implementation, to monitoring. Then, towards the end, you have people who would write a conclusive report about looking back to say whether all these things have been followed according to the original plan. This is what accountability stemmed for. But people now bastardize it in the way they use the word here and do as they please. You find somebody who is a general manager and he becomes the company's accountant. He becomes the company's whatever because he's GM. General manager, I've heard GMs being called gate men, being called GMs as well. And they abuse their office. They refuse to work within job descriptions. There should be job descriptions at every point. And those job descriptions are gateways that ensure that people are operating within the policies. And it's a point and to monitor and to ensure governance, which you have mentioned earlier on. Governance is about setting a set of rules and asking that people follow it. Of course, there are different stratas, like accountability upwards and downwards and sideways and in a circle. All of them are part and parcels of accountability and indeed governance.
Yeah, I mean, everyone expects us to be very political in the analysis, and we deliberately started on the policy side of things. So when you say accountability in governance, the first thing that would naturally come to people's minds would be that someone is a governor, someone is a president. But that's corporate governance too. I'm sure you're well versed in all that. So at the end of the day, it's about accountability. Accountability is accountability,
Indeed.
whether you're in the public or private sector.
Even if you're in a home.
Yes. So what makes it much more illuminated when we start talking politics? when a political office holder is involved, and then we'll start asking, is he accountable to the people? Why should that question even arise?
Well, the question is specific. It's not generalized. The question is, why has this individual in this position performed? So to answer that question, you have to hone in on what the question is and what the issue is. I gave you an example of you expected to drive 50 miles an hour and I expect to be driving 100 miles an hour. The two are not the same. The two speeds are not the same. So you cannot judge the person you've asked to drive 50 miles an hour and say, look, the person who's doing 100 miles has outperformed you. That is not the right way to do it. So they talk about accountability and governance, and everybody's eyes home into government. And that's where we miss the point. This is where we miss the point. We have to step backwards to the genesis and understand that governance starts at home. Accountability starts at home. If you raise a dishonest child, that dishonest child is unlikely to be very honest in government. If you are unable to establish a relationship mechanism in your home between you and your partner, and that's where governance, in its elementary stage, then you are unlikely to control or manage what is happening there. So we need to keep looking back at the LCM of these issues in order to grow it into institutions, grow it into governance, grow it internationally, because they have common denominator that runs through it. But people will say to you, oh, forget about that. We are going to do that. When we get to the government, we see what the government does. The only difference is that when you have a larger beneficiaries, you have a larger crowd, then the tools by which you use to craft policies becomes different. Your methodology becomes different. Your methodology has to respond to the various interests of people you are there to serve. Because in your home, you probably have 2.5 children, and their needs are restricted to that. Whereas out there in a local authority, you may have 2.5 million people with various interests. So it's about how you escalate those things and look at the various needs of the people and look at the amount of resources you have in order to deliver, and be honest about what you want to deliver. Don't tell people to look left when you're going right. That's pure dishonesty. That is not accountability. That is not governance. You can call it whatever you like, but you keep deluding yourself. You are not, at the end of the day, delivering anything.
So, again, when we talk about accountability in governance, the other side, which is the people, are always demanding. Is there also a role for the people when it comes to accountability?
Yes, there are the stakeholders. They have serious role in that, but you have to engage them. You cannot say, oh, you people, market women, for example, you are part and parcel of it, and you don't talk to them. And you tell women, we'll create toilets for you, and you don't talk to them on what type of facility they need. So there's a role, and that role starts from conception. How do you consult these people? How do you take on board what they want done? You have a responsibility to consult them. You are actually paid to consult them. You are held responsible for delivering. Go to the market people, go to the village, find out what they need the way they need it. If you go to a restaurant to eat a la carte meal, they'll ask you, your steak, how do you want it cooked? Do you want it, you understand? So it's all part and parcel. So when they bring your food, it represents what you ordered. So they are central in this process because they are the majority, they are the main stakeholders, and they have authorized you and sent you out there to go and do the needful. But you went out there and become something else. I don't want to use any offensive word.
So, I mean, but at the end of the day, the people are always probing and asking whoever they have elected or did not elect, because not everybody would vote for a particular leader, but they insist that you are holding their mandate, whether they voted for you or not, so that you are accountable to them. But there are instances where some leaders just refuse to be accountable. What do you think should be done in this situation?
Well, first of all, we have to interrogate that question to see whether they actually refused to do that. They may not have refused, they may have chosen a different path. And remember, say for example, if you have a governor, it's like he is walking the street and he came to Junction 4, crossroad, and within, he has to take one out of the 4 roads. So he has to analyze, he has to think about it, he has to weigh a lot of things. So if he chooses the second turn out of that roundabout, the other turns are not going to see him. And it will be unfair to start accusing him of disregarding the other 3, because you were not there to know the reasons why he had decided to go turn that way. So we need to have more information before we start throwing accusations left, right, and center. But of course we don't do that. And of course there are people who did not vote for him. But the tenets of democracy is that if you win, even, like in politics, if you win, even if it is by 1 vote, you become responsible for all. And everybody, whether they voted for you or not, the debate, the war, the argument finishes there. You now come together to develop your community. Because when 2 elephants are fighting, the grass suffers. So if you continue as opposition to undermine the leading party on the basis that you didn't vote for them, you are shooting yourself on the foot. Because whatever budget they control, your aim should be to encourage, work with that governor or whoever is in charge, encourage them to think towards your constituency, those people you pretend or you profess to love. It is now for you to say, okay, the campaign is over. It is now time for us to distribute this thing and remind the winner, please remember these people, you are also responsible for them. So the whole idea of continuing to undermine him and make sure that he doesn't function is just self-defeating, and it's nonsense.
We'll take a break here on the Eastern Eye. When we return, we'll find out why there has been a lot of politics in the probe and whatever it is in the demand for accountability in governance. Stay with us. You're welcome back to the Eastern Eye here on Afia TV, a program that x-rays the political, social, and economic developments around us. My name is Alex Ogbodo. I still have Professor Ukemenam here in the studio. So let's talk about why it looks like in this part of the world, and even elsewhere, it looks like the loudest voices for the call for accountability are usually those on the other side of the politics in any society. Why is it so?
Well, it's a simple matter of those who shout most. Malcolm X will say that the spring that makes the most noise gets the oil. Because if you're sleeping in your favorite Vono bed and the spring keep waking you up, you'll be forced to wake up and give it oil to shut it up. So yes, the louder you, even in the animal kingdom, they test their weight by the one who shouts loudest. So it is part of the campaign and the social interaction processes that goes on. However, the key thing about that is that before you criticize, first of all, try to understand what you are criticizing, how what you are criticizing has been put together, and what are the steps it is expected to take before you know whether that has missed its point or whether it has done. We must separate Paul from Barnabas. We must separate those who are screaming for their own selfish agenda. And there are a lot of them. There are those who are screaming for genuine reasons because they have seen that things are not going well. But screaming is one form of addressing the issue. There are other ways of addressing the issues that are even more profitable or that are more beneficial, could be to engage the people in a dialogue. Persuasion. If you are not in a meeting, you are very unlikely to influence the debate that goes on in that meeting. This is what we go through every day. But in the political arena here, we tend to think, or people tend to think, that politics here is extraterrestrial. That it's something that doesn't bother. This is why you get people say, hey, I am not in politics. I am not interested in politics. Guess what I say to them? Say, if you're not in politics, can you cross the road when the light is red? If you're not in politics and the light is red, try and cross the road and see what happens to you. Because that light there is a product of political action. Political action stemming from policy, ideology, policy, implementation, resources, monitoring, and evaluation. All these form part and parcel of the system. So, all well and good, we need to have people who can scream and shout, who have loud voices. And again, the holders, like if we use the governments, some of them respond to different stimuli. Some respond to public shouting. Some would prefer a more one-to-one dialogue. Some may respond to a carefully crafted letter sent to them, talking to their mindset. So, just like a hunter that goes into the forest to hunt, before you go there, you first of all identify the animal you want to shoot, you want to hunt down. There's no point taking toke gun to go and shoot Adaka. It's not going to work. Adaka is too clever for that kind of animal. You won't get it. So if you want to criticize the government, get your facts and figures right. Look at the approach you're going to use. Does it work? Is it about making noise? What do you personally want to achieve? Some people may just want to achieve embarrassing the government. They're not genuinely interested in what the problem is. They just want to make noise so that the government will settle them and they will bugger off and do absolutely nothing. So there has to be integrity in both the leading political party or the opposition. So that if you're criticizing, you look at us when we go to meetings. Somebody makes a point about in a meeting. Another person thinks that the only way they can contribute is by being negative. That is not the only option. Another option is for you to take that point the individual has made and advance it. Add value to it. Because you all have the same community you are serving. It is not about divide and rule. So I think our people need to take a more common sense approach to those things. And also take a more professional approach. Professional in the sense that you understand that accountability is vertical, yes, where you follow the systems of who is in charge of what and you kind of hold them to account, or it is the other side, in which you have to look at who are on this other side of the case. And there's also the issue of the two people, say local authorities, holding each other to account as well. So accountability is very important because human beings are what they are. They probably move away from, take their eyes off the ball. You know what happens to a goalkeeper that takes his eyes off the ball?
Of the ball.
Exactly.
We'll have to pick it out from the net.
From the net, indeed.
Great. So let's talk about whistleblowers. You know, in this part of the world, you know, they've tried it a few times. Even the EFCC at a point encouraged people and say, if you see something, say something. But it looks like the whistleblower thing has nosedived again. Is there a problem with the whistleblower policy? And has it worked elsewhere? Is Nigeria trying something that hasn't been tried before? Or has it been, unquote, Nigerianized?
Well, first of all, Alex, you have to have evidence that it has nosedived. Is it based on the numbers or what? You see, the thing about whistleblowing is that the people you're reporting those things to have to evaluate the quality of evidence you're providing. Because there are a lot of naughty people there who will say that you have taken somebody's wife when you were miles away from what is being accused. And if they are not clear on how to evaluate those things, they'll be spending a lot of resources chasing their tail. Because investigating a crime is not cheap. So if even something happens even in a police station, but police station is to lower extent. If you go to police station to make a report, they would evaluate the story you're telling them to see whether it's worth them going after them. So in other parts of the world, whistleblowing is a very, very important tool. It's a very, very important tool. In my court, where I adjudicate, if you bring a case of whistleblowing, there are certain things we check. The whistleblowing, have you done it in the interest of the public, or is it on your own personal interest? If it's based on your own personal interest, the amount of weight we give to it is well diluted. In fact, it does not qualify in law unless it is in public interest. But if EFCC is invited to it, they must be looked upon from the point of it being in the public interest, whatever is being alleged. But then EFCC, with their limited resources, as it were, would always make a decision on which one to go for, having evaluated the contents, the motives, and the magnitude or the public interest of what is being alleged. So, as far as I know, whistleblowing is still well up and alive in Nigeria. It's just that some of your colleagues in the media, sensationalize certain cases and ignore others. I heard about Peter Obi and people being paid to publish all sorts of things about him. So you get that sort of, it's a classic example of how people use whistleblowing instruments. So there are people who must abuse it. It's the nature of humans. Anywhere in the world, even in UK, oh, I can't get my way. Okay, I'll report you guys. But what they don't know is that reporting them to law, there's a difference between whether those guys are, what they're doing could be bad manners, but it may not be illegal. Unless it is illegal, that is where the legal institution like EFCC will take an interest. If it's just that they are hopeless in what they're doing, they're incompetent, then they'll ask you to go elsewhere to seek justice.
So, I mean, we can continue to have this conversation, but there is now a need for balance, isn't it? Because how can accountability be balanced with the need for effective decision-making and action in governance? There is need for that balance, isn't it?
Absolutely. But it has to be built into the process in the first place. You cannot move the goalposts when I want to score a goal. It's not how football is played. You don't come into the pitch and once I'm about to score a point, you move the goalposts elsewhere so that I'll kick in the empty thing. So there is need for those, and those academic analysis. When you're writing a report, you say there has to be this, there have to be that. True, they have to be those, but it has to be complete. Built into the system. For example, you have a policy and you're not capturing evidence to see whether that policy is working. So how can you come at the bottom of the end, and start accusing that policy of not working? It doesn't make sense. So if you want to come to justice, come with an open hand, they say. If you want to approach that, then go to what they have done. It's like some of this the debate about Biafra coming in. And I've advised a group of people, one of the ways in which we can make fast forward on this is to go back and collect the document Biafra used to surrender. There was a contract signed to accept the surrender. In that, it contains very critical information. So, in policy terms, in government terms, see what the issues are, see what it says. If you're building a road, did it say that in the next 6 months you must build 10 kilometers, given that all the resources are there? If you don't give them the resources and you come to accuse them of not building up to 10 kilometers, you've already lost the argument. So our commentators, advocates, all they call them, if you want to be a good critic, get your information right. Get them accurate. Otherwise, the people will floor you.
So, do you think that institutions can leverage technology in making sure there is accountability?
Of course, particularly the AI has been a very important thing because it doesn't lie. If, say for example, your workers coming into this studio, if they are supposed to clock in at the gate, and they're supposed to be here 7:30, there's no way they can change that. Technology will just say what time you come. It doesn't look at your face. So technology is central to it. And you see how the banks are using it these days. When you see your bank statement, it tells you the time the money was taken out, where it was taken out. And then if you gather all those information during your review, then you're in a better position to say that more money is taken out of ATM in Ogui Road than is taken in Ababa. Then you can adjust. There's no point sitting in your house and saying, I can see more traffic in Ababa. They must be using ATM more. They could be taking lower figures. But over there, the frequency might be low, but the amount of money that is taken is higher. So we need to look at what does the policy say. Then we now look at capturing the information that backs up, that justifies, or that undermines what the policies are. So anybody who wants to do that, come prepared. Don't be an armchair scientist that sits in a home and tells people what happens in the market. We had native doctors who were quite good in telling us that, but I don't think a lot of them exist anymore.
So at the end of the day, It's garbage in, garbage out. Is that what it is?
That's computer.
Accountability is what you put in is what you get. Or is it something else?
No, it's something else. Garbage in, garbage out is largely restricted to computers to a large extent, because computer takes what you give it.
Because I'm saying, if you sow accountability, what do you reap in return?
You can't just sow it. Okay, if you farm, I'm a farmer, I farm yam. You cannot just sow cocoyam and expect to get a yam. It just doesn't work. So if that's what you mean, then that is the case. But even if you sow yam, you still have to look after it. You cannot farm yam and go to sleep, go to bed. And some months down the line, you expect to get this anam type of yam in your backyard. So I keep mentioning these processes that people have to follow. So if the policy is a bad one, during the period you're capturing the information to justify it or not, that is the time by which your review will start showing you that the policy is flawed, because the policy is not addressing was not addressing the people or the instruments or the issues. Then after the review, then you can now say to go to drawing board and say, hey guys, let us take away item 4. It's not working. There's no point us sending out traffic officers on Sunday to go and stand in the traffic lights to catch people who are breaking the light. One, some of them, a lot of people are in church, so there won't be many breaking the light. The traffic warden themselves may be in church and the traffic light is not staffed. So why are we spending so much money on that? This is sort of things that can come out from a review of policies. And government is a business. We tend to miss that point. Government is a business, and in a business, you bring in resources, you manage it, you deliver, and you look at your outcome. Does it deliver what you set out to do? This is why this democratic process seems to be hitting them a bit harder, because at the term of new elections, you find, I mean, you listen to Peter Mbah's speeches. A lot of time, he takes some time out in his speech to enumerate what he feels he has done. It is campaign. He's not waiting for the last time to, towards the last end of the whole thing to start bombarding what he's done. So that gives everybody opportunity to go and cross-check what he says he's done. Yes, get their own facts and figures to challenge him effectively, rather than ignoring it at the time for election. You come out and say he didn't do anything. Yeah. So people need to understand what they are criticizing. You can't just criticize. So I say, I use the hunter. If you're going to shoot animals, go to hunt animals, find out whether it is an animal that runs very fast, in which case you can't chase it on your feet to catch it, or one that flies too high that your gun cannot reach there. If you identify this, then you can now identify the instrument which you are going to use. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. And people are busy wasting their time. Armchair scientism everywhere. What I notice is that in this country now, a lot of people want to be broadcasters. Yes? They want to be pastors, predicting what is going to happen. Because I saw one that came and the pastor was held hostage because what he predicted for the man did not happen that year. And he's taking so much money out of the man. So you have a lot of them coming out, telling you what is going to happen. Why is it that when something serious happens, people say, hey, I said it. I said it was going to. If you knew it was going to happen, what did you do to prevent it? You can just say, I saw it. So this is complete waste of our time. It's not taking us anywhere.
So, I mean, just more like a straight answer now, I want from you.
Yeah.
So, you believe that politics cannot smother accountability?
It depends on who is doing it and how. Politics is about bringing out rules and regulations. It's about policies that is going to make life better. But part of the instrument of that is instrument of accountability. And if you don't structure it very well, the word accountability becomes meaningless. So policy without accountability is not going anywhere. Policies without review dates is not going anywhere. Policies that doesn't have opportunity to capture evidence is nonsense. It's not even what the paper is written on. So politics is about people coming together, accessing, analyzing the society, and put together policies that's going to correct those things or improve it according to the dictates and the demands of the society. But for it to do that, you have to translate it into policies. You have to now put into mechanisms for capturing evidence of delivery of those policies. You have to review the information you have. There are certain new goals and new targets. Without all those things, politics is, you might as well leave politics to remain in your home.
On that note, I have to thank you so much for coming on the program tonight. Very many thanks to you, Professor Ukemenam. Professor Ukemenam is, of course, the Executive Chairman, United Kingdom African Arts and Culture in the Olympics Village, Stratford, London. He's also a criminologist and, of course, just very many things here. United Nations expert for Africa development. Thank you for coming on the Eastern Eye tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And that's the Eastern Eye for tonight. We'll be here tomorrow, same time. And of course, for those of you who are seeing just there on our screen that Afia Radio is turning 2 tomorrow. So celebrate with us on the dial 99.3 Afia Radio. We're also on the website. You can listen to the station 99.3enugu.com. Of course, you can listen and join us on our live radio celebrations from tomorrow. My name is Alex Ogbodo. Good night.